going to tie a Polish woven nymph today, and with this I'm going to start off with a size 10 scud hook, and that's a 1/8 tungsten bead. And to make this fly heavier, I'm going to start to add some lead wire to it. And I'm going to use 10 wraps. I'm going to push that up to the head, and then I'm going to just snip that back off. Keep everything nice and secure there. Okay, so the thread, I'm going to tie this in two different steps. So the thread that I use for this, the first part of the application, isn't really that important. I've got 8/0 black, so that's what I'm going to use just to start my fly here. And I'm going to take a couple of wraps behind the lead, through the lead, and back down, just to get that good and secure. And I can break off that last piece. Now I'm going to use a ribbing for this, and with this I'm going to use a thin or small copper wire for the ribbing material. And so I'm going to tie that in right behind the lead, and I'm going to take that all the way down to the bend of the hook there, and then bring it back up to behind the lead. Now for this, you can use a couple of different materials. There's the one that I like to use is floss. It's a material that I have around. You can use, there's some stretch material that you can use. I've seen this even done with wire that you can do the weave, but I like to use the floss. And so I've got two different colors that I'm going to use. The first is this orange, and so I'll tie that in. Again, I'm not too particular. I want a smooth transition here, but I'm not too particular where I start that tie. I'll bring it back up. I'm going to measure this out. With the floss too, it works if the material is wet. If you wet the material, this is a 4-strand floss, so when you wet it, the 4 strands come together nicely, so it just makes it easier to work with. I'll start to tie in this. So the way I'm tying this is one on either side, and I'll show you what it looks like from the top here once I get this down. So I'm going to bring this down to the same tie-in point as everything else, and then bring it back up, measure off my section. Okay, so I've got it secure. You can see hopefully there that a side of green, a side of orange. I'm just going to make sure this is all bound down really well. And I'm going to bring it back up, and at this point I'm going to whip finish the head so that I can remove the thread. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to reposition the fly. So I'm going to, might be out of focus just for a moment here. So I'm going to have the fly facing, I'm going to rotate it. Alright, hopefully this comes through on camera. What I've done is I've got the vise rotated upside down, I've got my fly, and I've got these 2 separate strands of floss that I tied in. Now one trick that I've learned to this, and I'm sure there's people that do it differently than I do, but one trick that I've learned is that with this floss, the wetter it is, the easier it is to work with. And what happens when you start to make some of these weaves, they cinch into one another nicely or better. So I've got some water here. I'm just going to get these wet so I can start to work with it. And now since the orange is going to be my bottom color, I want to take it over. I'm going to take the green around and cinch it tight. The orange goes back under. Orange for the belly. Back over. Orange under. Green around and to the back. Orange over. Green around into 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 the back. Now I'm almost at the bead, so what I'm going to do is reverse the vise and come back, and you can see what we've done there. So I'm going to hold this all together so it doesn't unravel, and readjust it here in the hook, or in the vise. Hopefully you can see what we did. Now I can leave those strands hanging. I want to reattach my thread at this point, so I'm going to take back my bobbin, and again, at this point it really doesn't matter what thread I use. I'm going to take my A-dot black again, and I'm going to reattach it. So this gets a little tricky. I'm going to hold the threads, or hold the floss down here, and with the same, I'm going to pinch the thread in my finger and take a couple of wraps here and then catch that floss. Take a couple of wraps, and then when I'm happy that I've got it secure, I can come back through and clean this up. And you're going to be dubbing over top of this, so don't worry if there's some scraggly ends. Now with my copper wire, I'm going to take this in and out of each little groove that we made. So I'll start off behind, and I'll just work it into these grooves. Until I get up to the front, and then I can tie that in. And again, you're going to put a thorax in this, so you don't have to be too clean at this point. So to keep my thread wraps to a minimum, I'm just going to whip finish it here to get it done with that section, and then I'm going to clip that off. Alright, so let's take a look at the fly. We've done our weave. We've got a nice woven body there, and we've added in our copper wire. And so the last thing that I do for this first step is I do give it a coat of nail polish. And the reason I learned this the hard way, with that floss, after a couple of fish it starts to fray, and so I want to make sure that this is a durable fly. So I tie this in 2 steps, and once I'm done with this section, then I'll come back through and coat it. I'm just using Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. Make sure I get the belly, and I get the back. So I'll give that a good coating of nail polish, and all that will soak through, and it's just going to make the fly a lot more durable. We're going to let this set up and dry, and then when we come back, the last step is the easy part. It's just dubbing in a thorax. So now that we've allowed our check nymph to dry from the coating that we put of nail polish on, we can tie in the thorax. So I'm going to start with my 8/0 tan thread. I'm just going to reposition this hook slightly so I have a better angle. I'm just going to start to reattach that thread, and then I can break off the excess. Now for the thorax on this, what I like to use is natural hare's mask. So anytime I do that, I wax the thread so it sticks better. So I'll just put a thin coating of wax there, and I'll get my hare's mask and I'll pull off some pinches of material. And then I'll just start to put that, dub that right on the thread. And just start to wrap and build that thorax up. Take one more clump, so I'm going to re-wax. Get some more hare's mask here. Get that good on the thread, and then just start to take some good wraps through for the thorax. When I'm happy with that, I'll come up to the front and start to make my wraps to finish this fly, and then 3 or 4 whip finishes here. Readjust. This thread slipped off there, so I'll put it at a steeper angle. Make sure I can catch the front of that. So handful of whip finishes. Tighten that down. And that's all there is to it. So that is a Polish woven nymph.